Hello. Let's get this started. I hope you already enjoyed some food and drinks. At least some. Hi. So, Comet, huh? First, maybe a short introduction of our team, so you know who to talk to. I mean, we are kind of branded anyway, but Frank is not here. He's in Sydney. Let's start with the interesting part. There's Thomas over there. Lucas, he's sitting over there. Tobin, there he is. Philip, and me, Daniel. So what is this about? Today we will basically do an intro section into what is the hackathon about, into atomic swaps using HTLCs. We will talk about what Comet actually is. Then we have like a small break, some socializing and some hackathon team finding. Let's see if some more people show up so we can form some teams. And then we will do like a small coding session where I show quite a lot of our tools, and we can like do atomic swaps locally like on Rectus together. So first, in order to participate and do stuff, you will need these tools. If you don't have them installed, then probably get them installed during my talk now. Yeah. Good enough? Good enough. Okay, let's talk about the hackathon. So the idea of this hackathon was to basically code together, inspire each other to see what one can do with Comet and to get Comet to the next level. I will talk about Comet shortly, but in the end it's about having fun together and understanding the blockchain world a little bit more. So on Friday, that's where we are today, we have like the workshop session. Tomorrow there will be breakfast at 8:30, quite early, and then we have like a detailed presentation, we call it topic presentations, where we dive into certain like focus groups that one can like put research or time on when it comes to Comet. Then there's lunch at 12, dinner at 6. After like the detailed presentation from 9 till 10, it's basically just coding. Everybody can just work on what they want to work on. Sunday there is breakfast at 9 and then a Q&A session from 9 till 10. Of course we are here, like the Comet team is here anyway, so you can ask us questions anytime. We didn't know how big the event would get and how many people would show. So we made an official Q&A session. If it stays this small, you can ask anytime, anywhere. Then there's lunch and then there's final pitches. For the final pitches, the idea is that you actually prepare something for us, like a 5 to 10 minutes presentation where you kind of show what you came up with. So maybe we first start talking about the why. Why Comet? And well, let's have Bob here. Bob is this wonderful figure, and he has already some cryptocurrency. He got some Ether, but he got some Bitcoin in the early days, and he wants some Ether now. And there's exchanges out there, already there, that basically have everything. You can almost, like if you go to the big exchanges, you can trade almost any cryptocurrency there. So Bob deposits his Bitcoin there. And if he's lucky, he probably gets some Ether back. If he's unlucky, the exchange probably gets hacked and his funds are just stolen. This happened numerous times in history, and I mean, if you look back 2014, there was like one of the biggest crypto hacks, Mt. Gox. I think most of the people in the room know it. And this was literally one of these moments where you like sit in front of your computer and you look at your screen, you're like, what? Where's my money? My money's just gone. It's just gone. And you're like, Mt. Gox, where's my money? And there's like tons of lawsuits and bankruptcy and whatnot. And in the end, you get nothing back. And that's it. And this guy didn't even go to like, this is like the head of Mt. Gox, and he didn't even go to prison. He was sentenced to like, I think 3 months, but like, how is it called? Unprovisioned or something, so he actually doesn't have to go. He doesn't have to go to prison. So in the end, the money was stolen, nobody knows where it went. Probably some of it actually stayed with the exchange. And this is not the only example. I mean, Mt. Gox was back in 2014 here. It was one of the biggest crypto hacks. But since then, others have, other exchanges have been hacked. And especially in 2019, like 2018-19, you can notice a trend, it's getting more. Like, it's not getting more in volume that much. I mean, 2018, the CoinCheck hack was also really big. But like in amounts of like exchanges being out there and central exchanges being hacked, it's like quite extreme. So the question is, I mean, the blockchain is decentral. We talk about decentral, the blockchain is secure. But you still have this problem of once you are within one ledger, within Ethereum or within Bitcoin, you cannot easily get out. That's why central exchanges exist. But actually you can. And Comet is one way to do it. So what we want is basically, I mean, if we have two people, maybe I'll just use this thing. If you have two people, so let's call this guy still Bob, and this is probably Alice. And Alice probably has Ether and wants Bitcoin. And if they find each other, they can actually lock up their funds. So you can actually take your Bitcoin, lock them up on the Bitcoin chain, which is secure. Alice can lock up her Ether in an Ethereum smart contract, and only if both have locked their money up, you release it, and you swap the ownership. Of course, if one party doesn't lock it up, so let's say we're in a scenario where he locks it up, she doesn't, then he can just take his money back after a certain amount of time. This is the concept of hash time locked contracts that I will introduce in more detail later. And in the end, that's it. And that's pretty much what we want if you just want to exchange money. In the bigger picture, I mean, Ethereum, Bitcoin, nice use case, probably not that interesting. In the bigger picture, we see it kind of like this. Now you have central exchanges and you can trade anything on them. In the future, we see all kinds of currencies being connected within the Comet protocol. So you could trade Monero Bitcoin, you could trade Monero Mimblewimble, you could like Grin, you could trade against Ethereum, you could trade against anything with anybody. So our vision is that we believe in an open financial system that is truly inclusive, censorship resistant, and non-discriminatory. We really feel that. We really feel this vision. We don't want any third party being in control of our money. We want to be in control, and anybody should be able to, and no government should be able to have like power over taking your money away. And our mission is that we want to connect all the blockchains without adding yet another one. We don't want to have additional security assumptions. And most of the solutions when it comes to like what is called a DEX, a decentralized exchange, add additional security assumptions. So Comet's biggest advantages are, like I already said, no added security assumptions. We do not want to add an additional blockchain or an additional token. We want to leverage what is already there, the underlying ledger. So if I trade Bitcoin to Ether, then I use Bitcoin and Ethereum ledgers, and that's it. And I monitor those. It is open, like the complete protocol is open source, anybody can use it. It is trustless through hash-time lock contracts. I will go into detail about this later. It is completely decentral. We actually also do quite a lot of research around decentral negotiation protocols. More about that later. And it is non-custodial. It never holds your funds. So Comet never holds your private key at all. It basically is a tool that tells you what to do at the right time, but you still are fully in control. Basically, you or the application that you build. And that's what this whole hackathon is about. Open challenges we are dealing with. Of course, like nothing is perfect yet, and there's always room for improvement. Ongoing research we are currently doing is especially around trade execution time. If you take Bitcoin, for example, the block generation time is like 10 minutes. And that is relatively slow. If you take like a hash time lock contract, you would have to lock your money up like a significant amount of time to also have like validation that there's a certain number of, I lost it. Confirmation. Thank you, Thomas. I knew you could think my mind. So we are planning to integrate layer 2 solutions like, for example, Lightning for Bitcoin. There's extended privacy. So one thing we personally really want to focus on is having more privacy so your trades are not traceable. That is like one solution. There is script-to-script integration. I will not go into detail there. There's like ongoing research. Lucas, if somebody has questions around this, Lucas is the right person to ask. He's currently developing a proof of concept for that. And of course the integration of more chains, and not every chain is the same. Some chains don't actually have like Ethereum smart contracts that full-blown. You would have to go more towards like signatures and actually scriptless script. So this is kind of like interconnected from research topic-wise. And one thing we are also strongly working on is usability and stability, but that's like constant improvement that's constantly ongoing. So let's take a look at our roadmap. So basic atomic swaps is basically done. Given commit, you can already swap Bitcoin to Ether, Ether to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin to ERC20 tokens. So you can actually directly trade Bitcoin for ERC20 tokens, for example, for any ERC20 token, and vice versa. The next thing, like I already said on our roadmap, is like improving privacy through scriptless scripts. So we are working on green integration. So the first currency that we will add there is like green to Bitcoin swaps and Bitcoin to green. The next thing on the agenda is then instant trades. We are actually working in parallel on that. That is basically reducing the latency, adding layer 2 networks, and then adding more and more and more. Once we have scriptless script, like a prototype for Bitcoin and green working, we can focus on more currencies to add through that technology. And then we have awesome swaps. So what does Comet actually do for you? Like that was kind of like motivational, like why we do this. So let's see what this is actually about. So what is a trade? The business of buying and selling or bartering commodities. Well, nice, but that doesn't really say much. So we tried to break it down into like a process steps. What happens in a trade? And the first thing is kind of like you decide what you want to trade. Like I can have, like for example, a car I want to sell, so I'm like, boom, my car. Or I can have Bitcoin, or I can have Ether. But I mean, I must have something, and I say like, okay, I want to trade this, and I want to have something else. Then I have to find a trading partner. This is like, you have to find somebody else that has what you don't have, but what you want. Then you have to agree on a price, third step, and then you actually have to execute the trade. Like in the real world or whatever, like if you just do like an exchange of real goods, you can actually meet and just exchange them. Something like in Australia, we have Gumtree for this, or eBay. Like when it comes to currency, you can go to a bank, and the bank will exchange it for you. Sorry. When it comes to digital assets, you can do it digitally. So what the Comet protocol currently does for you is trade execution. So it basically just executes the trade. Finding a trading partner and agreeing on the price is research, and defining the what is basically just you. Okay, so let's take a closer look. Trade details. The order, the maker, the taker, and the execution. Let's define some terms, so later we know what we're talking about. The order. Well, the order for a digital asset is basically a trading pair. So if you take Ethereum and Bitcoin, Ether and Bitcoin as examples again, we can define a rate. So I can say I give you 10 Ether for 1 Bitcoin, for example. Then we have like the maker. The maker is the one who makes the price, so basically creates orders for somebody else to take. So he publishes the orders and defines what he's willing to sell or buy. Then you have the taker that takes the orders. So he comes and he finds maybe somewhere online, you can have like a central order book, not defined yet, and just says like, okay, I want to do this with you. And then you have the execution. And the execution, when it comes to digital assets, is actually just a swap of ownership. People sometimes imagine that with commit you actually take one thing out of a ledger and put it on another ledger. This is impossible. You cannot do this. Like, these ecosystems are closed. So in the end, it is actually just ownership change. So you transfer Ethereum on, like Ether on Ethereum, you transfer Bitcoin on Bitcoin. And this is what commit does for you. So let's define a little bit more like high level negotiation execution. So we see kind of two phases. That is the negotiation where the maker makes an order, the taker takes an order. Then we have the execution where both of them start their C and D node, their commit network daemon. Then there is some messaging exchange so they can actually do it. So they both have the parameters to come up with the hash time lock contracts. And then there's monitoring of the blockchains to see if, for example, a hash time lock contract was already funded. Okay, we talked about hash time lock contract several times, so let's go a little bit deeper into that. A hash time lock contract is basically exactly what it says. It's a contract that is locked, that locks up your money over time and only releases it after a certain timestamp is reached. So let's say we have the taker, and the taker has Ether. And he locks up his fund in an HTLC, hash time lock contract. And then at some point, the maker comes and redeems it. So he actually takes the Ether out of the contract, the ownership is transferred. If the taker locks up his money, and within this time window until this timestamp is reached that is defined in the contract, the maker does not come and take the money, he can just take his money back. So he can refund. So that's refund and redeem. The same, of course, happens on the other side. The maker will lock up his funds as well, in this case Bitcoin. The taker can redeem it. If he doesn't do it, then the maker can refund it again. Well, nice and good, but how is this actually secure? How is this great? Well, we have to introduce cryptographic roles. Now it gets a little bit more complicated. So we were talking about taker and maker. Let's say the taker, and Bitcoin and Ethereum. Let's say the taker is in the role of Alice, and Alice has Ether. And the maker is in the role of Bob, SpongeBob, who has Bitcoin. Alice, in her cryptographic role, comes up with the secret. So she generates a secret, which is basically like a random alphanumeric string. You can imagine it like a password. She hashes that secret, sends the hash of the secret over to Bob, and then creates an HTLC where she funds the Ether. This HTLC contains the hash of the secret that the secret, when going in there, will be compared to. Bob does the same. He has the hash of the secret as well, so they basically both do the same thing on different chains. He locks up his money, and then Alice can redeem with the actual secret. So she is the first one to redeem. The person that comes up with the secret is the first one to redeem, because you need the actual secret that will be compared against the hash to redeem the contract. Once she redeems, since it's a public blockchain, Bob can actually see the secret. So he now knows the actual secret and the hash. She got the Bitcoin, and he can redeem as well. So that's how hash time lock contracts work in theory. When it comes to practice, there is a little bit more than that, because it's not only about the secret, it's also about like identities, like addresses, because you have to have like a redeem and a refund address where the money goes. But a little bit more to that later. So we were talking about the secret now, and this is what makes the whole thing secure. But one thing that is essential is also monitoring of the blockchain, because Bob here has to notice that she actually did that in order for him to do that. So he has to notice that Alice funded, so he also funds. Alice has to notice, she has to monitor the Bitcoin blockchain in this case to notice that Bob funded. Then she will redeem. And again, Bob has to notice that she redeemed. He has to extract the secret from the transaction, the redeem transaction, and then he can redeem. So this is what a HTLC looks in pseudocode. You can already see that the parameter list is a little bit longer than just like the hash of the secret. There's the hash of the secret. There's also the amount, of course, that is to be locked up. There's a redeem address where the money goes to when it is redeemed. There's a refund timestamp at which you can actually execute the refund. And there's a refund address that the money goes to when it is refunded. Then you have like two functions that is basically redeem, where you have to put in the secret. It hashes the secret within like the capabilities of the underlying ledger, compares it against the secret hash that was actually given when the contract was created, and then the money is transferred accordingly to the redeem address. For refund, it is basically comparing, is the timestamp already over? Are we already past that? If so, yes, you're allowed to refund. Let's take a look back on commit. What does commit now do within this? So we have Bitcoin and Ethereum blockchain again. We have Alice who holds Ether, and we have Bob who holds Bitcoin. First, they negotiate. This is actually also part of what we do, but it is not part of the protocol yet, because we are still doing quite a lot of research around it. In the end, she's like, okay, I want to trade this, and he's like, yes, Ether, boom, let's do this. He actually makes up like an order for her, gives her the order, and she's like, okay, I accept this, I like your rate. Then the execution starts, and both of them start their commit node daemon. The parameters to construct the hash time lock contracts are exchanged, which is basically like quantity, the addresses like refund and redeem address, the expiries, which is basically the timestamp when the other party can refund, and the hash of the secret. Then the commit node gives Alice, or the application that Alice runs, the application that is built on top of the commit protocol, the transaction information to fund. So the commit node actually doesn't sign your transaction. It doesn't do the transaction for you, but it tells you like, this is what you have to do. Then Alice can do it, or the application on top, that can be a wallet, for example, can do it, can actually send the fund transaction. The commit node monitors the blockchain, so Bob's commit node monitors what is going on the Ethereum blockchain, and by like taking the parameters of the HTLC, can extract the transaction, the fund transaction of Alice, and tell Bob like, oh, she funded, and give Bob the fund transaction and say, now you have to fund. If Bob now says, I don't fund, then Alice will have to wait until like the end of, until the timestamp is reached, and she can refund, she can take her Ether back. But let's say Bob funds. So he's a nice guy, he's actually keeping up to the order, he actually wants to get the money, he probably made like a quite good rate. So he's like, okay, I'm funding the Bitcoin. He locks up his money there. The commit node on Alice's side is monitoring the Bitcoin blockchain, notices that Bob funded, tells Alice, okay, you can redeem now. Alice redeems with the secret. Actually, the commit node prepares that for her because the commit node comes up with the secret. She doesn't have to deal with this. This is all done by the protocol. She redeems, gets the Bitcoin. The commit node on Bob's side again notices that the redeem transaction actually happened, extracts the secret automatically from the transaction, gives Bob the redeem transaction, and he can execute this and redeems the Ether. And they swapped. Completely trustless. Okay, now we take question, and then we do a short break. Yes?
How is it trustless if from the diagram it looks like the commit node is essentially still the sort of a trusted third party that's intermediating the exchange of the secret between these two people. doesn't that introduce a level of trust in the equation?
Well, the commit node generates the secret for you, but it's like open source software, so you can actually check how it is done. You could even create it in a way so you can plug modules into it where you do like a different secret generation. But in the end, the secret and the hashing of the secret is basically just to secure the smart contract over time. And like the question is like, are you thinking about in a text scenario or like because I mean commit doesn't hold the funds anyway. Commit cannot take anything. You can argue that, for example, like generating the secret or something like is not good enough, and somebody else could try to hack the contract by like stealing a secret or something. But besides that, anybody else from the team wants to answer? Philip, are you paying attention?
I'm trying to understand what the implications are of having the commit node daemon basically be the third party that manages the secret for me. What role the secret plays within the hash time lock contract, to the extent that either the commit, for example, is there a chance that the commit node daemon could either take the fund itself by generating a counter transaction itself in this equation, is basically what I'm saying. In other words, could the commit node daemon perform a man-in-the-middle attack between Alice and Bob and steal either party's funds?
I'll take it if you want.
Take it.
Well, yeah, if you don't trust the software, so you think you're running an executable and actually you're running some other executable, that other executable could do whatever it wants, right? So we assume that there's some level of trust between the code that you think is running and the code that is running. So you either downloaded the source yourself, built it, or you did a verified build, or some sort of thing. But yeah, if the software is not doing what it's supposed to do, then sure.
Is there a future wherein second question, sorry. Is there a future wherein we could just...
Can you use the mic? I don't know. I'm actually not sure if the mic is needed. I can also take mine off.
Just for the video. Is there a future within which we get rid of the commit node daemon and the wallets on either side just do this negotiation of basically both monitoring their respective chains, but also negotiating a secret with something like the Hellman key exchange or something like that, in order to sort of disintermediate the commit node daemon altogether?
Sure, but then you have to trust the wallet, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, at some level you've got to trust your software. And yeah, hopefully by being open source and others looking at it, so feel free to look at it and read every line, so only 20,000 lines, then if we can make it as simple as possible, people can verify it and people can trust the software.
So one more thing regarding the trust. In theory, the calculation of the HTLC and the addresses are deterministic. So if you provide input data to your CND node, like the addresses where you want to get the money to, and the CND node returns you an address, you could verify that this is actually the correct HTLC. So you can build another level of verification on top of the client which uses CND.
Sorry, so if I understand you correctly, you're saying that the HTLCs right now, or possibly in the future, allow for some level of verification by either side, or either wallet on either side of this equation, to basically check that the HTLC that's been generated is basically in the hands of the counterparty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah?
So just to clarify, the commit protocol would run on some server node and then connect to a full node of Bitcoin, a full node of Ethereum?
Yeah, we go into detail about that later, yes. But at the moment you connect to full nodes. We also implemented, like, you don't necessarily have to run a full node. You can go against blockchain explorers, for example. You could use Infura, for example, for like Ethereum. You could use, for example, Blockstream for Bitcoin, but then you have like kind of security assumptions again. So if you want to run it in the most secure way for yourself in the most trustless way, you would have to run full nodes, yes.
So and then what, it will be something like my Ether wallet service that everybody connects to? Is that the design?
I don't really understand the question.
I mean, it's a server that anybody who wants to do this swap would connect to, like my Ether wallet?
No, everybody runs. Like if you want to do a swap, it's peer-to-peer, there's no server. There's no server whatsoever. Like you run your CND node, you find another person that wants to trade with you. That's a different problem. That's basically part of the negotiation phase. And then you execute the software, you run full nodes or connect to blockchain explorers, and the other person does it, and that's it. There is no server.
Every party who wants to do this, use this commit protocol will have to run their own node.
At the moment, yes. We are working on building it into a library, so you can integrate the library into an application. Commit is a protocol. It enables applications on top of it. It is not meant to be like a full-blown wallet. It is an enabler of other products.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, so what we're seeing here is basically the happy path, right?
Yes.
Super nice diagram, by the way. So my question would be, what happens if, for example, Alice redeems her Bitcoin, I guess, and then Bob fails to redeem his side of the transaction before the time window?
Well, then he loses his money.
Okay.
No, that's just it. I mean, you have, that's actually going towards like how to choose the expiries. I have quite a lot of slides for it. If you want to go into detail, we can. The question is, shall we go into detail of expiries? Well, I mean, it's relatively complex. In the end, you have to take certain constraints into consideration. For example, that Bob's time window for Bob's time window always has to be shorter. So Alice is basically forced to redeem till here because Bob can refund. So his refund timestamp always has to be shorter, like closer in the future than hers. So he basically has time till here to redeem, right? And Alice only has time till here because from this moment on he can refund. Of course he can decide not to do that, but he's actually also forced to do that in a way. Like, maybe I'll show the slides, but
so yeah, so then you want to say is that Bob has an incentive to
both of them have incentives.
redeem it, otherwise he would lose money. If Alice behaves as a rational actor, because Alice would be like, yeah, cool, I can refund my HTLC, definitely I'm gonna take back the money. If she doesn't, then yeah, okay, could be.
Let's give these slides a try because I actually have never used that, and a closer look on expiries. So first, expiries are timestamps in the future. Just to recap, that's kind of important to know. It's a hard timestamp that cannot be changed. It's hard in the smart contract. So we focus basically on this. They exchange this as well. They have to both agree on it because both of them have to kind of deploy their contract in a way so that the expiries make sense. So they have to agree on it beforehand. So let's say Alice funds, Bob funds. You can now see the redeem windows actually. This is Alice's redeem window, and this basically is Bob's redeem window. Actually, it not really is, but this is like Alice's redeem window, and then this is Bob's redeem window. From the minute on she redeems, he can redeem because he needs the secret. Alice is protected by the secret, right? Bob isn't. Bob waits for the secret and then can redeem. So you actually have a text scenario towards that, but I explain more on that later. So Bob can refund. Alice must have redeemed till then. So this is kind of the point where she have to have redeemed. If she redeems in time, fine. Bob knows the secret. and he has time until Alice's timestamp to redeem. So if he does it within time, everything is fine. Let's take a look on Bob redeems too late. That's basically the scenario we're talking about, right? So let's say they exchanged this again, they actually agreed on sensible expiries, Bob's timestamp is closer in the future than Alice's. She funds correctly, everything is fine. She redeems correctly and somehow Bob doesn't. Well, then in the worst case scenario, she refunds and he can't. He can't redeem then anymore. He cannot stop her from refund. So he has to foresee that the expiries, actually the commit protocol kind of has to foresee that the expiry is so much in the future, like Alice's expiry, that he has enough time to refund. So there is enough time. If Alice is forced to redeem in time, Alice is protected by knowing the secret, but she also has to carry. Okay, let's take a look at this scenario. I think like, if once we go through all the scenarios, it will become clearer. It's kind of like tough to bring all of this together in one slide. So she funds again. He funds. This is Alice's redeem window. But she redeems too late. Then Bob can try to spoof the secret because the transaction is not confirmed yet. We are talking blockchain. It always takes time until the transaction is confirmed. He could try to extract the secret from the transaction that is unconfirmed and bring his refund transaction in faster, and Alice cannot, like, then she would lose her money basically, and she cannot stop him from redeeming. So she has to care that she redeems within this window, otherwise Bob could attack her. So she has an incentive to do this. That's important to understand. They both have incentives to stay within their boundaries. If they don't, they might lose money. The same for Bob. Bob is forced to refund if Alice doesn't behave like correctly. So let's take this scenario again. She funds correctly, he funds, everything is fine within the redeem thing. If Bob refunds here, he just takes his money back. She didn't redeem. And he refunds correctly, fine. What if he doesn't? What if he doesn't follow the incentive? Well, Alice could wait so long that she could also refund and redeem because she has the secret. She can basically redeem anytime. She can redeem here if Bob doesn't take his money back. And if she brings the redeem and the refund transaction in, she takes both. So Bob, then he cannot redeem anymore, and he cannot stop her from refunding. So he has to refund within a certain boundary here. If this is within the time, so his refund transaction is for sure be confirmed, so Alice cannot redeem and refund, he's safe. Understood? Alice is also forced to refund. So Alice's redeem window reduces with Bob's funding transaction. Yeah. So if he funds really, really late, it's probably better for her to wait and not do anything. Just wait until she can refund and not try to redeem. Because if she tries to redeem, Bob could then again attack her because it's already so close to his refund scenario. So you kind of have certain time boundaries here. Like if he funds way too late, it's probably better for Alice to wait and just refund. This sums everything up. So let's go through it once more time. If Alice funds late, Bob can consider not funding at all. We actually didn't talk about that scenario, but that's also one. So if she funds really late, Bob could just say like, sorry, but this is not within safe boundaries, I don't do anything, I step back. Then that's just it. He doesn't have to. If Bob funds really late, Alice should consider not trying to redeem, but just wait and refund. And if, like, that's generally like the general rule, right? His refund scenario, his redeem window between those two timestamps has to be like enough for him to actually be able to redeem, depending on the underlying blockchain. And if Alice does not redeem in time, Bob has to refund within safe boundaries. That was the scenario where he has to refund at least somewhere here, otherwise she could take both. Make sense? Did it help?
Awesome, definitely. So if I get you correctly and I understand it, then we basically have a trade-off here between making transactions fast and like network risk on the blockchains, right? Because there are two different blockchains involved, and what if one of them shuts down? Or like, you know, the hash rate.
The assumption kind of is that the blockchain doesn't shut down,
Right.
because you can, I mean, your transactions it might take longer till they are executed, but they will be executed.
But then they might be at a timestamp that is past the window, right?
Philip, you want to take that?
Well, but you were talking about that transaction being included after your HTC has expired, right? So like you want to redeem after that's expired. It doesn't matter that much unless the other party tried to call refund already. And then you would compete with, there would be two competing transactions going to the blockchain, and the first one wins. And that's, so you can add more transaction fees to increase your chance, so that like your transaction, if you want to redeem, for example, you add more transaction fee to be able to be faster in the blockchain than the refund transaction.
But aren't they on different blockchains? So potentially, like, let's say Ethereum shuts down for whatever, half an hour, and Bitcoin doesn't. Are there some scenarios where that could lead to one of the parties losing their money?
Well, you would always compete on one chain, right? I mean, if Ethereum has let's say a spike in transactions and stuff takes longer to be actually executed, then they would compete on Ethereum only towards either refund or redeem. One party would be like, okay, I'll try to refund, and the other party would be like, I still want to redeem. So they would both kind of they have to add add stakes on the transaction then. So you have to make your transaction, the transaction costs would probably go up. So it would be safer for you then, if you still want to be safe that you can redeem, that you put very high transaction costs. Yes, that is a certain trade-off.
Thanks.
That was depicted by when he had this, it said that a transaction is done too late and the window is getting smaller. So that gap is dependent on the chain. So if it's Bitcoin, you might want an hour or 2 hours. If it's another chain, it could be less.
Yeah, choosing the expiries is really not that trivial. It depends on the underlying blockchain, and it depends on if you really want to do it right, it also depends on the load. So you would have to monitor what's going on the chain in order to choose it in the right way. Quite complex formulas around that.
I have another question quickly going back to the operation of the commit node daemon. Is the commit node daemon running its own peer-to-peer network? In other words, do they talk directly to each other, or are they communicating in some other way?
It's completely P2P. We actually use libp2p for the communication. But basically, it's only the exchange of the execution parameters here. So you have to find consensus on it. The rest is just monitoring the blockchain. So there's no communication between the commit nodes here anymore, because everything happens on chain. The commit node just monitors the chain. So basically you have an initial agreement on parameters, and then the rest just happens by monitoring the blockchain.
Right. So you also mentioned, for example, that you guys would like to make the commit node daemon into a library so that it can in future basically be directly included in your client wallet software. Would that then also implicitly mean that your client wallet would participate in this commit peer-to-peer network?
It will probably change the boundaries, actually, of what the application has to fulfill, but the honest answer is we are not sure yet. Philip?
Just to clarify your question, what's your understanding of the commit network in that sense?
That in order for the commit nodes have this initial secret generation that has to occur, and in order to do that, both of them have to be in communication. At least that's my understanding. that the counterparties nodes have to be in communication. Now, I haven't talked about node discovery. In other words, how does my node discover your node? But I'm assuming there is some mechanism for that at the moment. So there is some level of networking that needs to occur between the commit node that's running, or the daemon that's running in my infrastructure, and the daemon that's running in your infrastructure. So that's basically what I mean by the commit network.
Yep. So what you see there is it's split up in the negotiation and execution phase. So for the execution, you're right, both C and D nodes need to communicate with each other. And Daniel already said correctly that we use libp2p, and we basically automate just a TCP socket to send around messages between the two nodes. And it's only one round trip, so after exchanging all the parameters for the HTLCs, you don't need to send anything else around. And since we use libp2p, you could implement a node discovery based on a peer ID, but it's also enough if you only know the other party's IP address and a port, and then you can just connect to this guy.
And that's basically part of the negotiation phase. And somehow when he creates the order, he somehow has to tell people how he can be reached for execution. And that's actually, like, tomorrow there will be a detailed presentation on this given by Philip, where we discuss on, like, how can you actually find other people. We have several ideas around this. We had some parts already implemented, but it's like, it's a complex problem, and it goes towards, like, probably really new solutions that are not yet out there. Like, one idea we have towards this part is, for example, make the internet your order book. Like, decentralized order book is generally like a tough thing, right? You have to do everything by yourself, you have to keep it up. A centralized order book is always easier. One interesting question is, for example, is an order book on Ethereum, that is in a way just on Ethereum, is it decentral? It's like completely open, right? You could go more towards privacy and keep your own order book. You could say, like, I'm a maker, I create an order, I kind of pack it in a link in a certain format and throw it on Twitter or in a Telegram group or anywhere you want. We called this the commit link at some point, but I don't want to influence people too much because it's kind of interesting to see what people come up with. And then any taker could, process that information, knows how to contact that guy, and they could start executing.
Yeah, sorry, the reason I was asking the question was because just from my thinking, what I'm assuming is that a third party would probably be a single wallet provider that builds a wallet capability for both sides of the trade, so that both people are actually using the same wallet software potentially, making an assumption here, and that that particular wallet software would then have its own counterparty discovery mechanism built into it. Is that a realistic scenario?
Yep, that's realistic, yeah.
That's committee. Okay, so let's take a short break.
A few moments later.
Everybody ready? Okay, I'll just start rolling. So, what do we provide for you to get started with Commit? Well, first there's create-comit-app, which includes TypeScript examples and builds on top of the Commit JavaScript SDK. It is the first getting started, like that's basically where you get started. And it runs a complete local environment for you if you want that. So it starts up reg-test nodes for Bitcoin and Ethereum. It generates an ERC20 smart contract, and it has like the SDK, which is basically here, also has wallets included. So create-commit-app kind of like the environment funds the wallets with money, and you can basically do atomic swaps out of the box with this locally. The SDK is a TypeScript library, and it wraps the communication with CND and provides wallets. And then there is CND. So if you say you don't want to build like on top of TypeScript, you could go against the REST API of CND directly, but that's a bit harder. The SDK introduces, makes the communication with CND already way simpler by taking several assumptions around what products can be possible. That's basically the getting started point. If we take a closer look on the stack and how everything interacts, let's start from Alice's side. So on Alice's side, the taker side, you could, for example, build a web application that provides, like, you can imagine it like any swap tool out there. I don't want to name any names, but like any website where you, for example, have only one maker who basically is like the market maker and tells you like this is the rates, and anybody can go on the web page and accept it. So the SDK provides the commit client. CND at the moment is still a binary, so it has to run locally, but like you can connect from your browser to it. CND monitors the blockchain nodes that are spinned up by create-commit-app. The Bitcoin wallet within the SDK can send transaction. The Ethereum wallet can also, like, the same on Bob's side. On Bob's side, like from the market making side, you could do some kind of automation, for example, a trading bot. And basically it's the same setup. So you also have the commit client, commit connecting to the nodes, and Bitcoin and Ethereum wallet handling transactions. So let's take a short look on like monitoring the blockchains and what it actually usually requires. So at the moment, in order to do a swap, you basically need two commit network daemons, one for Alice and one for Bob. In a real world scenario, they would of course run on different machines somewhere in the world for the specific person. And you would have like the Bitcoin and Ethereum node for both Alice and Bob. Create-commit-app actually simplifies that for you. So it basically runs only one Bitcoin and Ethereum node in a Docker container on local private networks, rec test for Bitcoin, and private network, like basically the def network of parity for Ethereum, and the CNDs that create-commit-app starts for you for the respective parties connect to these nodes. The environment also, like I already said, provides funding of the wallets and also deploys an ERC20 contract, so you have like everything ready to basically create applications on top of it. So now let's do something. Let's swap something. I will parallelize this now. Where is my command line stack? Just a sec. No. There you are. So let's clear those. Okay, so basically I have like 3 terminals ready. One will be used for starting the environment. So I basically spin up the commit nodes and the Ethereum and Bitcoin node. Then I will have, because this example will run like in 2 terminals, one will be the taker side and one will be the maker side. The maker will come up with orders, the taker will take them, and then they will swap. So basically the slide shows like what is inside happening in CND, and here I will do the swap. So first we start up the environment. Actually, first we create a project, and create-commit-app kind of does that for you. So if you want to follow, you can actually open your laptop and do it together with me. So you do yarn create-commit-app new, and then you give it a project name. I will name it foo. For me, it already says that the create-commit-app 052 is already installed. For you, it will probably start downloading it, and then we'll execute the command. If you check now, we actually got a folder foo. Anybody following? Still need the command? That's the command, yarn create-commit-app new foo. Don't have to name it foo. Then I go into the folder, the project folder. And as you can see, you have like a package.json, a source folder, a readme, and an examples folder. So this is basically like your application now. So if you go into source, you find an index.js where you can start basically developing your application. But if you want to get some inspiration on what is possible and how to interact with the commit SDK and all of this stuff, you can take a look at the examples. So if you go into the examples, you see like several. There's ERC20 BTC, BTC ETH, and separate apps. Separate apps is the one we will use now. Separate apps is an example where you literally have like different terminals for taker and maker, so it simulates more closely how commit could be used in the real world, because it actually splits it up into two different applications, one for the taker and one for the maker. At the moment, they're quite simple and they basically do the same thing. I will show some code later too, where we kind of can take a look what actually happens under the hood. Well, let's do an atomic swap. So let's start the environment now. Inside one of the example folders, I will go to separate apps. You can see there's also again like a source folder inside. And since it's a TypeScript project, there's some like package.json and some configuration for TypeScript. And I will do yarn start env, and it will spin up the environment for me. We can actually take a look at this. This happens in Docker containers. So if I take a look, what is happening? Currently, there's nothing running. Since I only just ran this in here for the first time, it's actually downloading create-commit-app again in here. Now it's starting the Ethereum node, so we should see that now. Yes, you can see that a parity node is starting up. Let's give it some time until it started. Come on, create-commit-app. Now it's starting the Bitcoin node. We should see that too after some time. Yes, now. So you can see that a Bitcoin core node is like, actually a Bitcoin D node is starting up. Now the whole environment is running. You can see there are two CNDs running now as well. So you have like two CNDs, Bitcoin and the parity node, and those two CNDs are actually connected to those. They're monitoring already. Now, I also go into the correct folder here. We want to run the separate apps example. So I do a yarn install to install the dependencies. Foo. It takes some time. So now, actually, we are basically, if you look at the slide, we're basically in this scenario. So we have CNDs running, nothing happened yet. There was no negotiation yet whatsoever, so the execution also didn't start yet. Okay, dependencies, come on. Is the internet somehow slower now? Did somebody start downloading Docker? Okay, so the dependencies are installed. So we can now start by running each side of the trades. So we have the maker and we have the taker, right? In order to run the maker, we will come up with the order. We can say yarn run maker, and it will start up the maker. Everything is on the command line so far. There's no UI in these examples. So we can see the maker started up. he has like a certain Bitcoin balance. This is like funded by the environment for you. So when this spins up, it funds the wallets and everything. So you have like a Bitcoin balance of 10 and an Ether balance of 1,000. We're really rich. Let's start up the taker as well. The maker already created an offer now and is waiting for somebody to take that offer. That is actually just on HTTP. I will show a slide about that later, how that kind of all connects together. So we run the taker on the other side. And this example steps you through all of these steps. So you kind of can like control what is happening. So the taker is like, okay, let's ask the maker for an order. This assumes that they already somehow know each other. So the example does not really go into detail about how they actually found each other. That's one challenge for the hackathon. So you can see now like that we actually took the order, like we have like a certain rate, and we received the latest order, and now we are basically at the stage where we can start the execution. So they agreed on, okay, we want to do this. They agreed on a certain price, and now we are basically at the stage like where part of the execution is already done because we are kind of like here. So basically, CND is like, hey taker, you have to fund now. So let's do this. So an Ethereum HTLC was funded. If we want to take, so basically we are here. We could take a look at this now too. I have like some Postman collections where we can actually extract the transactions from the local nodes and all of this, but I would not go into detail about this now. If somebody's interested in this, we can have a look later together. This is basically like more for like when you want to validate that it's actually doing the right thing. For example, taking a look at did it actually deploy the right contract. And now it's like the maker side to fund the Bitcoin HTLC. Just because it's interesting, if I would have hit enter here first, then it would have waited until this one is done, because it has to wait until the party that is Alice funds, because the maker defaulted to Bob and the taker defaulted to Alice, and then would have automatically done it, because it basically just keeps looking, it keeps asking CND, hey, can I already fund? Can I already fund? And CND is like at some point saying, yes, you can. So let's fund. So basically we were at this point. So we saw that the other transaction happened. Bob got the fund transaction and he funded the Bitcoin HTLC. Now Alice can redeem. So basically it's again like CND, did you see it already? Yes, I saw it. Here's the redeem transaction. Boom. And Alice redeemed, revealing the secret, and is done. She got the Bitcoin. Now Bob can redeem, and that's it. Since it's Ethereum, it's a bit faster. We even simulated on Rectest. And that's pretty much it. And that's basically what create-commit-app does for you. And if we want to go into details, let's have a look at some code. So basically let's do this right, because this is like the complete project. So I'll open actually the folder where I created the new project. It is in my temp folder. And I called it foo, right? Where am I? Did I create it on the very top? No, I created a date. There it is. There's the foo. That matches here, right? Not here. That matches here, right? I'm like, if you go back a bit, we're like in temp, and then foo. So let's open this. That's basically the project. So you can see that here you have the source folder, here's the index.js where you have like some information. It would also print some of the environment that spins up for you here. This is basically the template to start creating an application. And here are the examples. We executed separate apps. And this is basically the go-to example we would recommend for the beginning. And it has tons of like comments for you to get started. So it explains basically every step that is happening in detail. We can take a look at the taker. That is basically Alice. So in the beginning, we kind of retrieve the balances from the Bitcoin wallet, which comes from our SDK. So this is like in the create actor function. If you want to take a look at this, I won't go into detail about this now. It basically like initializes the wallet and all of this stuff for the actor, the Ethereum wallet as well. Then these are like always these like waiting steps where like, do you want to go on? Theoretically, you don't need this. We also have, of course, in the real world application, it would usually not do that. In other examples, it actually doesn't. If you run BTC ETH, it just goes through, basically like automatically does everything for you and just swaps. Then there's this negotiator that is like basically class provided by the SDK that does the negotiation for you. Like there's one for the maker side and one for the taker side. On the maker side, you can create orders. You can take a look at the maker here for 1 second. So you have the maker negotiator here that you have to like give more information about like how you can actually connect to the maker as well. Then here is an order created. So this is basically what we executed in the end. So he says like, hey, I do ETH to BTC and these are like my amounts I can go for. The maker is then like, the taker is then like actually connecting and getting an order. So he's retrieving an order, then he like decides if he wants to accept it. If he says like, okay, I want to actually do this maker, I want to do this order, I want to take this and want to execute it. This is basically happening here. This is like a function that decides if it is acceptable. So he says, I only accept it if it is at a certain rate. In this case, this is like the rate. And here he would actually retrieve the order and then decide if it is acceptable. And then they start swapping. And that's kind of the beauty of the whole thing. The swap itself, like if you use the SDK, is extremely simple. You basically do everything is asynchronous. That has to be said. So you await the funding and you await the redeem. And that's on both sides. The taker funds first because the taker defaulted to the role of Alice. It says this in the comment here. Once it's done, it prints the transaction ID. That's what we saw here, right? When it was actually, oh no, that's the wrong one again, sorry. That's what we saw. Maybe I'll make this a little bit bigger. That's what we saw here. It always prints like the transaction ID, and now we could actually go to the local environment. It's still running. I mean, if you take a look, these Docker containers are all still running, and these transactions actually happened within nodes running there. And this is the redeem for the taker side. Of course, in between, the maker would have to fund as well. This is what the comment says here, right? So this waits until the funding of the other party happen, and then the redeem is triggered through CND. See, you kind of request, you tell the SDK, hey, I want to do this. The SDK keeps asking CND for you and executes it once it's available. For the record, refund is not implemented in this example. This is just a happy path scenario. So if one party would not comment, then you would actually have to do refund. You would actually have to implement refund additionally. Okay, so far so good. Any questions?
Where do
Where do we get the gas price and the miner's fee?
Where do you put the gas price and the minus fee?
The gas price is basically decided automatically. You cannot really control this at the moment. The SDK decides it for you.
Okay, so it can be hacked.
Well, why?
What do you mean with it can get hacked?
Change it.
And what's going to happen if you change the gas price? So Daniel showed you the fund method. You can jump there. And
You want to go into the SDK?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the commit node returns you all the information you need in order to fund your HTLCs, and it gives you a recommendation of how much gas you should pay. It's right now you can't edit it like by a parameter, but obviously you can change it as you wish. It's JavaScript, so you can override everything. It won't change anything. There's no security flaw if you provide less gas. Maybe your transaction might not get mined, but that's the worst thing what can happen.
And in the end, I mean, this is like a ramp of, like a getting started and a toolkit for people to build applications. If you want to like be in full control of fees and whatnot, you just go against CND directly and you are in full control of everything, because CND just gives you the parameters of the transaction, tells you like this is what you have to do, and you can decide anything on top of that. The SDK is like to help people getting started, like in create-commit-app, and it evolves over time. Like it can definitely, like you can parameterize it more. The question is if that is needed to get started.
Was that your question?
Yes.
Anything else? Yes, Flo.
I noticed you guys are using like a custom image, I guess, for Bitcoin Core and Parity. Is there any special stuff going on in these nodes, or is it just a copy of like?
I think Philip should answer that.
So these are only meant for development, so please don't start a mainnet on that. And they are actually configured to only testnet and rec test and a dev chain on Parity. So for Bitcoin, it's just a normal rec test node. That's it. There's no special configuration. And I'm not 100% sure why we opted for this, but I think we couldn't find a single-use Bitcoin Docker container, so we just wrote ourselves. All what it does, it spins off a Bitcoin D node in rectest. And for Parity, we did some changes in the consensus so that we have regular blocks. So if you know Parity a little bit, they have a dev chain which provides you instant seals, and that's a bit suboptimal for our use case. So we used a proof of authority consensus, which generates regular blocks every few seconds. But everything else is just the normal Parity node.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know what most of that means. So, time to learn.
Please don't use it in production, these containers.
There's actually, like, just to like go further, there's also one example that shows how to use all of this on testnet, so to switch. But we had trouble with Bcoin, the Bcoin wallet, coming up with the balance in time. So in theory it works, in practice it's a little bit complicated at the moment. But like if you take commit as such, like the CND node, you can use it on mainnet. You would just have to create an application on top of it that enables it to do that. And could like configure it so it goes against mainnet nodes. That's it. Any other questions?
Yeah, so a quick question. In my application, so I have a custom generated private keys for both Bitcoin and Ethereum, yeah, right? So I use ECDSA for Bitcoin, right? Like catch for Ethereum and other things like ethash. So does it make any difference where the private key is allocated? Because commit node essentially needs to sign so the transactions are signed, right? Which are created by the CND. Should they? From what I understand, they currently you only support the mode when the private keys. So it's explicitly implied that they're located on the Bitcoin core side, right, and on the guest side. So can I use it on the client side?
I think I'll answer this with a slide.
So, you want to go?
Yeah, because I mean, you kind of see it here. The commit node CND does not really sign for you. Like the wallets do that. The wallets live in the SDK at the moment. But in the long run, of course, you are not forced to use our wallets. You can use whatever wallet you want. It's just that we say, hey, we provide this for people to get started, but you can use any other wallet. Philip?
Thanks for that. It was a really good question. It addresses the security of our node. It's a really important design decision for us that CND does not take any private key and does not hold any money. It does something in between. So we have to generate HTLCs, and for that we have intermediate private keys so that we can sign a transaction for the user, but the node never holds the money. So it generates some signatures so that it can redeem the HTLCs, but it's not in control of the money.
Yeah, and this kind of rounds it up. And the additional thing that is also part of the SDK at the moment, but probably will move later to CND, to the protocol itself, like being a separate negotiation protocol, or to something completely different, maybe the application layer, is the negotiation phase that you saw. That is actually just a Node.js server at the moment, just over HTTP. So basically, this is like the complete communication diagram of all these tools together. More questions, statements, fun, beer? No?
So how's the general understanding? Is it clear what CND does and what it doesn't do for you? I guess that's a yes.
Well, I see relatively long faces. Well, that's basically the kickoff for the hackathon. If you're still keen to do it, then I would say get familiar with the tools, we meet tomorrow. Well, everything is on GitHub. Like, it's basically like, if you scan this code, it's like, it's on GitHub. I can show. So this create-commit-app. So you have like all the instructions here. Basically, if you go to github.com commit network, then you have everything you need. You have create-commit-app, the SDK, there's also CND, but I would recommend starting with create-commit-app.
Yeah, that's all you need. If you want to create a simple application for kicking it off, create-commit-app is all you need. It downloads you, it provides you CND nodes, it provides you some dev chain nodes, and it sets up a skeleton in JavaScript or TypeScript for a simple commit application.
Any more questions?
How many prizes are there for this hackathon?
There's a first prize and a second prize. The first prize is, as far as I remember, 10,000 pay tokens, and the second prize is 3,000 as far as I remember.
Why don't you just tell them the
The value in dollars, I think I said it before already, the value in dollars is around, for the first price is around 800 Singapore dollars. Other questions?
What about scriptless scripts? And your plans on actually this?
I think I'll just I'll leave this like this, and I'll just let's go social again and just talk.